It's the Prestige TV podcast. My name is Bill Simmons. I'm here with Juliet Litman. There has not been a lot of Prestige TV lately, so we're doing a Hall of Fame episode of a show that is not prestigious, Juliet, but a show that's super important that once upon a time gave us one of the great two-part season-ending cliffhangers in the history of television. I am talking about season 4, Beverly Hills, 90210, 30th anniversary this week of Mr. Walsh Goes to Washington, an important show to both of us.
So unbelievable. You mentioned it's a two-parter. On Paramount Plus, they've condensed it into one episode. It's just like a straight through. That really caught me by surprise, but I loved it. And I'd like to see streaming services take more chances like that. Great idea.
Well, one of the important things about this episode is they actually kept some of the babyface performance. I mean, there's a lot of iconic things about this episode, but you know, when these older shows from the 80s and 90s, they cut anything that has music in it.
Right.
So there's only a couple 90210 episodes where they kept the music. They didn't keep all the babyface stuff. There's an Instagram account of all the 90210 stuff restored, all the songs that, like the famous episode when Brenda was listening to Losing My Religion after she found out about Dylan and Kelly. That's not on the reruns, but this Instagram account restored that, but they restored some of the babyface stuff. So congrats to that guy.
Seriously. I was happy to see him, you know. 90210 for the finales used to bring in a great guest every time. It was always very exciting.
Oh, yeah. Like year after year, and they always went two parts. This led to the two-part at the end of season 5 and season 6, and there was 21st birthday season finales, but this was created it. Also, like, not a lot of two-part episodes back in the day.
No, definitely not.
It was basically a 2-hour movie. Big picture. Season 4, 90210. This is the freshman year when they go to college. They go to California University. All of them decide to go to the same college, which was a great TV trope, including Andre, who was supposed to go to Yale.
And Brenda came back from Minnesota, of course. She couldn't miss out on CU.
Brenda went back to the University of Minnesota, and like 3 people asked her what Beverly Hills was like. She's like, this place is too small. I don't want to be the rich kid from LA, and ended up going back. This was a 32 episode season.
It's unbelievable. It is so much TV. That is not a lot of time off for anyone involved.
And on the one hand, it's why it's the greatest. So some people think season 3 is the best of high school senior year when Dylan's dad blows up. To me, it's like no contest. Season 4, they go all out. They film on Occidental College, which is outside of LA. There's extras galore. There's fraternity stuff. They just blow it out. Even this episode, they go to Washington. They're actually in Washington. They started to cheap out in later years, but as a college experience, when I watched the show, I just graduated college like 2 years before. And I thought they really hit some of the college elements. I mean, granted, nobody was living in a $10 million beach house like Donna, David, and Kelly. But
I mean, that place is iconic. Yeah. I think this season is my favorite season, like one of my top 10 favorite seasons of TV, full stop. Like I have rewatched this so many times. There's a number of arcs that are wonderful, a number of arcs that are absolutely shocking. And these finale episodes like are how I like to think about 90210. Like if you're like, describe the show for me, I would tell you about these 2 episodes. And they're so good.
Well, we'll go through this episode, but I got to set the big picture for season 4 and the characters. First of all, Brandon Walsh, the star of the show. This was his MVP season. I look at this the same way like I look at Tom Brady's 2007 with the 50 touchdowns. He dates at least 5 different women. He starts out in the first episode. They're kind of borrowing somebody's beach house, gets involved with some girl from New York. And then we go through, there's some Emily Valentine randomly comes back into his life over Thanksgiving.
Incredible.
We have Lucinda, the married professor, who's just like the horniest character that was ever on the show, who happens to be married to Brandon's favorite professor, who has him tutoring the school's basketball star. So it becomes this whole fucking disaster. And then starts hanging out with Kelly, which is the big crux of season 4. Kelly's dating Dylan, and Brandon and Kelly, he needs to borrow a girlfriend because he's hiding his Lucinda relationship. and he borrows Kelly for the weekend for a retreat. By the way, no friend I have would have ever done this. Either way, I wouldn't have lent my girlfriend to a friend, vice versa. Just never would happen. And they go on this retreat, sparks fly.
Do they ever? They do some square dancing, if I recall. So, a lot of magic does happen in the woods. And the retreat, that must have been like in that Will Rogers State Park or like in Topanga or something. But it really nailed the feeling of the woods. And you're like, oh, this is kind of enchanting. And I've rooted for Kelly and Brandon ever since then. And to your point about him being the MVP in this season, I mean, he is so not only lovable, but dateable, even though he borrowed a girlfriend to hide his relationship with a professor. I mean, there's something so eminently appealing about Brandon in this, or you also could picture yourself with him because he's just Brandon. But oh my God, he is the best.
This is also the last year when he kind of wasn't mailing it in as an actor, because I think the next season he starts directing more, and he's just on autopilot from season 5 on. Season 4, he's still really good, but the end of the episode from the retreat, and Dylan, they're all together and they're all at the beach house, and and Dylan gets a little testy with Kelly, and he turns to Brandon and he says, if you ever want to borrow again, knock yourself out or something, and walks away. And then Kelly's just staring at Brandon with the all-time asking for it face. And Brandon's like, whoa, we're going to do this? So they set all that up. Dylan, they've been setting up for, I don't know, really since the Christmas episode. This woman randomly comes back into his life who claimed to have dated his dead dad, who had blown up in a car, even though he comes back in season 9, but we pretend that didn't happen. And his half sister.
Yes.
Which this is the second half sibling on this show, but there were more. I think by the end of the run, everybody had a half sibling.
Yeah. There's siblings just coming out of the woodworks. And then, of course, the step siblings always step siblings of Kelly and David. That's the most important sibling relationship, despite the fact they're not siblings. But then they each have Aaron as a half sibling. So that really binds all of it together.
Yeah, Aaron was a half sibling, but then Kelly found out her dad had another daughter that was another half sibling. Steve had 2 half brothers. There's just half siblings all over the place. But
true to LA in the 90s? What do you think?
No question. It was a crazy time. So this lady comes back in Dylan's life. It's immediately this sounds a little suspicious. And they're just setting this up. At one point, she has money in a bank account that Jim Walsh finds, because she can't sneak anything about Jim Walsh. He's one of the best financial guys in LA. And Dylan calls her out on it. It's all fine. She starts working at the Peach Pit, because when they never knew what to do with the character, they would get them a job at the Peach Pit. And then all of a sudden, this guy, Kevin, shows up. What was his job?
Kevin is a biochemist, and his goal is to save the Bay. Very explicitly, all he says is he wants to get into new technology to save the Bay. And they have the most menial language to discuss the idea of acid rain and pollution in the water. It's so funny, and they just completely buy it. Dylan
it's the hottest biotech idea in the world, but nobody understands what it is.
Dylan tells Jim it's a biochemical company that he's trying to start. What they're doing is working on cleaning up the environment. Just the whole thing. Cleaning up the environment, full stop.
Sounds like $1 billion business. So they're just planting the seeds. And Kevin, he's got this thick mustache. And I don't think you could look more untrustworthy than Kevin. And Dylan is just roped in. There's another Dylan piece here. Dylan was the season 3 MVP. And Dylan's season 3 was another...
incredible.
Just great season. He ends up in the love triangle. His dad blows up, cheats on the SATs. It just was killing it. Season 4, not a lot to do for Dylan.
No.
There's he gets carjacked. He kind of breaks up with Kelly. They get back together. There's some Brenda stuff, but not really. It's they don't really know what to do with him. So this scam was his big plot.
Right. And also, they still needed to have him be at odds with Jim, even though he was no longer dating Brenda. So this was a way for him to continue to fight with his main antagonist, essentially.
And then Brenda makes her own MVP run this year. She goes to Minnesota, drops out, comes back to LA. She meets Stuart, rich son of Jim business partner. They have a whirlwind romance. They end up getting engaged in Vegas, and they're going to get married in Vegas, and the whole gang goes for a very great Vegas episode. But then at the last second, they decide we're rushing into this.
At the very last second.
They don't get married.
Great about that episode? I didn't really understand. I was a young person. I'd never been to California. I didn't realize how close Vegas was to LA. And
yeah,
the
45-minute flight.
Yeah, you just jump on a flight in Burbank and you're there really quickly. So I really learned something from that. It wasn't necessarily to not get married when you're a freshman in college, but I did appreciate the geography lesson it gave me.
Yeah, this show was in a weird spot because a lot of the people they had cast, except for Brian Austin Green, who played David, were older than the characters in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which where the first year, second year, it's fine. But once you get to college, now you have people who look like they're 25, 27, 28 playing college freshmen. So they, on the one hand, were trying to speed up the adult stuff, but they have Brenda getting engaged and almost married in Vegas as a college freshman, which easily would have been the craziest thing that happened to anyone I knew in college.
Oh, definitely.
We're like, what happened to Sally? Oh, she almost got married in Vegas last weekend. We would have been like, what? Especially in the early 90s. And then Andrea gets pregnant. We'll get to her later. But anyway, Brenda almost gets married, doesn't. She then kind of has this weird, you're not really sure what's going on with her plot, leading to she decides to really get involved with rescue dogs. And then animal protest on campus. Almost gets arrested by the FBI, but it turns out she's exonerated, and then ends up in the single best plot that she had probably in all 4 years, being the lead actress of the school play.
Yes.
Which I know you have a lot of thoughts on.
Brenda's the lead in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, directed by the great Roy Randolph. It comes at the expense, once again, of her friendship with Kelly and the sanity of a woman named Laura. The main thing about Brenda being in Cat and Hot Tin Roof is we get to see her in many white negligees, and I have to say she's never looked better. Shannon Doherty looks so beautiful in this final arc of season 4. I wanted to ask you, perhaps we'll come back to it when we cover all of the women.
I'm ready to talk about it right now.
I'd like you to power rank the beauty of the women in these episodes, because there's a lot of really stunning women between Lucinda and Kelly, Brenda. I think Claire, though she may be young, she's
early
still...
Claire. But Claire was older than the character she's playing. No, it's the best year they ever had for women. Even the New York girl in the first episode was great looking. This Shannon Doherty season, she's never looked better. She's skinny.
Stunning.
It looks like she's been going out in LA 4 or 5 times a week.
Sure.
Like there might be a reason she was a little skinny, but it's skinny a little bit. Like I shouldn't have stayed out till 4 a.m, but it's like it's a look that made sense in 1994.
And I think in 2024, like this is how a lot of people dress again.
Yeah.
Like they're wearing a lot of Doc Martens with short skirts, and it's such a cute look. Plus, she has the center part hair with like very hard to pull off bangs. Like she just looks so beautiful. She also has like very manicured eyebrows, but it works for the look. Everything about Shannon Doherty in these episodes. I too would let her into my home and select her to be the lead in my play if I were Roy Randolph.
She was
totally
great. And she was almost too hot, because anytime she made a move on Dylan, you're like, Dylan's doing this. Like come on, he's not fighting this off. But this is also the best Kelly's ever looked, except maybe season 6 when she came back from when she fully recovered from her burns and had no residue of them. But she looks great, and this is her last year with long hair, and she's playing Brandon and Dylan against each other. But so anyway, Shannon Doherty, Brenda has this whole Cat in the Hot Tin Roof. The other actress who tries to sabotage it, they dip hard into a Tanya Harding real life plot to try to sabotage it. It's really crazy. It was like literally right after Tanya Harding too. And then Laura Kingman then tries to hang herself on the school stage.
It culminates with an attempted hanging. So
when we talk about 2024, some of the storylines in this, Laura Kingman maybe would have been reevaluated. There's a whole date rape episode with her.
This is her second storyline of the season. This one is more tragic, but the first one may have caused the second one. Like she's clearly like not a well person.
Yeah, there's like, no way.
Steve should date her. Steve should be her tutor.
There's no way this character would exist now in 2024. So anyway, Brenda, this all leads to the last episode where she's going to make one last run at Dylan, but she's also going to Roy Randolph. Well, we'll get to that. Kelly. So she joins a sorority.
Mm-hmm.
She's dating Dylan. Dylan's just a pill this whole season. He's like, I don't want to go to parties. Like just not a fun hang in any respect. All he wants to do is stay home and read books.
He drags Kelly down too. She's like miserable while dating him. It's not a good relationship.
It's a couple that never made sense and was I don't know, fairly toxic. Like I don't really know what
I disavow their ending. I just think that's another reason why I think of the show as season 4. I disavow the ending of the very end of the show of that couple of Callie and Dylan. So I don't like to think about it. They're terrible.
Well, it starts out, the whole season 4 starts. They came back from France and Kelly left early and things aren't going great. And then that's just how it goes. She gets involved with John Sears, who we see come back in this episode. John Sears, who is like head of the frat, who's just making a run at her, and is a bad guy. Great villain. They have good villains this season.
Great villain.
So she's got that. She's bad. Then she ends up back with Dylan, but then the Brandon retreat. And then now that's like the storyline. So she's never looked better. Nice beach house.
What? Oh, the beach house is incredible. The retreat is episode 22, by the way. Like it's like deep into season 4. Like it's like it sets up so much, and yet there's 21 episodes before that. Network TV was crazy. I love it.
Yeah, I can't even, like, at Netflix, what's the longest show they have? Like 10 episodes?
10 episodes, yeah.
Amazon, this is 10 episodes? Like 32 episodes is bonkers. But she's never looked better. The other female in the group, Donna, who, rough year for Donna.
I actually think this is one of her best looking years as well. But by the end, she looks great.
Best looking year. Yeah, I agree with you. But she's in college trying to get the radio show going with David. And we should talk about David as part of this because she stays a virgin, which was a pretty funny 90s theme. Like it's aged beautifully. Like I can't imagine anyone watch this going, wait, what? And her virginity and her lack of sex with David drives him to crystal meth. There's no other reason. He has a case of blue balls to the point that he has to go to hard drugs to try to fight it off. Like just have sex with him, Donna, for God's sakes.
All the ways that they try to avoid saying crystal meth and all the ways that they like come up with different terms for drugs too is like so funny. It's just a constant euphemism to not get to the point of like, well, he's frustrated, sexually frustrated, and so he's doing drugs. He's unhappy, so he's doing drugs. Like his relationship is maybe the most toxic, and yet it's the most lasting of the whole show. It's so funny, but he is such like a weasel. I'm like, do I like David? Do I hate David? Do I have any respect for David? I don't know, but he adds a lot to the show because it's so outrageous.
Well, it's the first season where he actually he's grown because he was like the scrawny teenager in the beginning. And by season 4, he's like grown up, handsome guy.
He's ripped, yeah.
But for some reason, they have him, the college radio station, they have like the middle of the night shift, which I don't think exists at any college station, but whatever. And he's trying to stay up. He's tired. So he ends up taking some speed. And within like 2 weeks, it leads to crystal meth. It leads to him stealing medication from his dentist dad. Why does his dentist dad have this kind of serious, hardcore medication, by the way?
Well, I think you used to get oxycodone for like a bad cavity or like a tooth pull or something like that. You'd get a painkiller. Oral surgery can hurt.
Okay. Do you get crystal meth?
you crunch it up, you mash it up and then you start snorting it. So maybe it's the same purpose.
Like if they had this show in 2024, would he just be doing fentanyl?
Yes, probably.
He'd be like, I'm hooked on fentanyl. So he's doing meth for like 2 weeks, which I'm pretty sure is like a life ruiner. Like once you do that, you really never bounce totally back. He's fine in like a week. Yeah. And then him and Donna adopt a dog that leads to a little rescue dog pie. He really has nothing to do the rest of the season, except once we get to this episode, which we're going to dive into, once he starts getting into the musical planning side. So that's his plot. Donna doesn't really have a ton to do. Season 5, they really step her up.
Definitely, yes.
With Ray Pruitt, with 1T and all that. So, and then the other female star of the show, who really should have been written off after season 3, was Andrea, who was already old for the show, was legitimately in her early 30s when playing like a high school senior, but then gets pregnant in real life during season 4. And they have to speed rush. She went from being a virgin all through high school to having sex with her RA, to then falling for this Latino bartender who looks like he's 38.
Well, he's in law school as well. So, he is older.
How old? Like how old is this guy supposed to be? Like he's got a receding hairline.
I think he's supposed to be like 25 or something. I do remember as a kid, I thought he had a real calming presence. I was like, oh, Jesse, he's a great guy.
Well, he's got one of those, like my wife pointed this out, like one of those Obama voices, like great deep voice. But she meets him at the Walsh's 20th anniversary party, which is like, like Thanksgiving range. Whirlwind romance, and by final exams in this episode, she's having a premature baby. I don't know how the timelines, I don't know how long it takes to have a baby, but I'm pretty sure it's not 5 months.
One thing I was also really confused by, she's waking up to take a 3 a.m. pill. As far as I know, you don't take any pills while pregnant. Like, I don't think there's a medication you should be taking regularly.
Well, they say in this episode, they say she has the baby and they're like, yeah, the baby's only 2 pounds, 8 ounces. And I'm like, that's a pretty big baby considering it's 4.5 months old. That's a giant kid. Considering you just conceived it over Christmas.
Also, she's so pregnant. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
She does look really, really pregnant. Of all of the sort of like scared straight, like have protected sex storylines, I feel like Andrea is one of the most impactful because she goes from like being the nerd valedictorian who's going to go to Yale to being a 19-year-old mom with a premature baby and a law student, like baby daddy. I'm like, well, that's just really not how things were supposed to go. So wrap it up, folks. Like, it's just a real cautionary tale with Andrea.
I think they were afraid to write her out of the show or send her packing until she had the kid for legal reasons.
Oh, interesting.
So
interesting.
That's just a guess. But from the moment she gets pregnant, this becomes not only the worst character on the show, but it just brings the show to a screeching halt every time they try to get some whole pregnancy drama and, oh my God, she might lose the baby. And, oh, she had the baby. Oh, the baby's too small. And, oh, I'm scared about the baby. And it's just every scene. It's like, can we go to any of the other characters? It's an all-time fast forward.
Oh, completely. And it's also not really related to anything. The only thing it does is it gives people like a place to go to provide an update. Like it's helpful with exposition, but I'm certain they could have figured other ways to do that.
It's also an unrealistic thing about college because when you're in college, you're just a narcissist and be like, hey, Andrea's in the hospital with the baby. Like, oh, tell her I said hi. You would never be like, yeah, I'm going back to the hospital. So then you have Steve Sanders. We mentioned he was accused of date rape and his girlfriend tried to hang herself during a school play. He jumped into a frat, which was a side storyline I really enjoyed. Like when he got iced out of the volleyball team. There's a whole, it turns out the president was secretly gay of the frat and he finds out about it at a coffee house and spills the beans to the rest of the frat. It's actually a really good episode and also an insane episode. Like I feel like if it came out now, people would die. But Steve, this is a good Steve Sanders season, right?
Yeah, definitely. He's likable because he's also humbled, but he comes out on top. Like he gets a redemption arc with the Laura storyline. And then you're like, oh, he's actually... Not only is he trying to help Laura and then be loyal to Laura, he like won't go see the play because of Laura. Like he actually gets to like grow and he's not just like the idiot that when he was in high school. So it is a good storyline for him. I also think that like
it's also the last year he looks like he's a realistic college student. Yeah, and the next year the hair starts going back too far and getting into some trouble.
Him versus John Sears, like it's fun having the bad boy be the antagonist for the villain, and that's like a really fun relationship too. John Sears is like beyond evil, like he's such a bad guy. It also really helps Steve because it makes Steve seem like totally like acceptable level of bad for a college guy.
Yeah, we think John Sears might be a bad guy, and then he's trying to get Kelly to have sex with him. And he's doing come on, I know what you're about. And it's like, oh, and then later tries to sleep with an underage girl that Steve stops. They have that, the girl from My So-Called Life. So Steve, he had the great episode he had this season, which I actually wrote about as an ESPN The Magazine column, was when him and his dad played golf against Barry Bonds and Barry Bonds' his dad. But Barry Bonds on the show is called Barry Larson. And it's like the father-son tournament, or I forget what the plot was, but Steve's dad, who's getting older, by the way, this made me feel old because I think Steve's dad is right around my age now and he seems like 20 years older than me. But he's juicing like the golf balls and Steve finds out this is in 1994. they're playing Barry Bonds, who 5 years later becomes like the face of
Juicing.
PEDs, basically. And somehow Steve Sanders, his dad, is cheating against Barry Bonds. Same thing. So it's fucking nuts. But that's a hilarious episode.
I'm glad you mentioned that you wrote about this, because before I knew you, I have two very clear memories. One, you always wrote about Andrea and how old she looked for the show. So it's a lasting thing.
One of my favorite plots.
And then on September 2nd, 2010, famously, you and Matthew Berry did the 90210 pod. And that is an all-time podcast. And I was like, I got to work for that guy because he respects his television show.
Yeah, we did it. I think it was September 2nd, 2010, 90210. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So you think that Barry Bonds episode is the 24th episode of this season somehow. It's called Cuffs and Links. I highly encourage people to watch it.
It's so deep.
This run from episode 26, where Steve finds out his frat president is gay. That whole episode is immensely entertaining. The next episode is Divas, when Brenda meets Roy Randolph. That takes us all the way through to the 30th episode, which sets up the final episode. So this is basically
6 episodes.
And then the first 9 episodes of season 5. This is my favorite 15 episode stretch, maybe of any show.
Agree.
Other than maybe like The Sopranos or The Wire.
There's something about the propulsive energy of first the Roy Randolph plot into Kelly and Brandon that is so thrilling and just like feels so right with this group of people. It's like it's like they're constantly rearranging the pieces on the board and they finally get the right configuration and it works so well. Brandon as big man on campus with hot girlfriend, like, was his destiny from day one.
Yeah, and for some reason they get away from it the next season. It's like, you had the recipe. Brandon,
I know.
Brandon's the next Bill Clinton and everyone wants to have sex with him. Like, don't fuck this up. And they fucked it up.
I also think that season 4 and they all come back at the end of the season has the best guest stars. Like from Deshaun Hardison to Lucinda to Chancellor Arnold.
Wait a second. Deshaun Hardell.
Sorry, Deshaun Hardell. I'm so sorry. Wow, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
Wow, I might kicked off the pod.
Like that's one of your favorite characters of all time.
I love Cress Williams. I love Deshaun Hardell. It's horrible. When I was watching him fall into the dunk tank, I was just like, this is so great. I'm so happy to see this guy. I missed him.
So we got for the side, these are just side characters. This is one of the reasons the show was so good this year. Deshaun.
Yeah, Deshaun.
Who's basically like, I don't know, he's going to be a lottery pick and Brandon's tutoring him and there's a whole bunch of shenanigans with that. Then he gets hurt. John Sayers, we mentioned. Kevin and Suzanne, the scammers. Roy Randolph, the lecherous play producer who like clearly would definitely take at least oral sex from Brenda without even thinking twice.
What do you think happened when she goes in? Just sex? Like, what do you think happens? She's very. So
this is an earlier episode than the season finale. The way she defends herself after, when she's like, "I've only had sex with 2 guys, Dylan and Stuart," is kind of a non-denial denial.
Maybe
I've
it's
only
just
had
oral
sex with 2 guys means like, yeah, she might have blown him.
Blowjob, yeah. I think that's probably what happened. I mean,
that's what I think too.
She shows up in a trench coat and a nightgown, so something happens, right? Like it's not a 0.
Yeah, it's. That's how I feel as well. I've always been pretty confident something happened, but that led to a great episode where her alleged friends, especially God. Kelly, who's the worst friend maybe of all time.
Kelly is the quickest to slut shame of any woman ever created
and
on
is
television.
The biggest slut on the show.
Yeah.
All she's doing is throwing it around. But the moment she has, I mean, her and Brenda hate each other. That's one of the keys to the show. It's like they're the all-time frenemies. Okay, so setting up this episode, here's what we got. Our big plots. California University's 28th annual Mardi Gras, which is basically, I don't know, carnival. Like a lousy carnival with Babyface performing somehow.
Yeah. Northwestern had that. It was called Dillo Day, and everyone got drunk. There was a performer. There's no like carnival, but it was.
Did it last for 4 days?
No. Also, I did note how they did a good job of like going from daytime to night. Like things got darker and later, and you could see it was evening. I appreciated those small touches.
Brandon is huge task force meeting. He gets to meet President Clinton, so he has to go to D.C., where he shows up at D.C. and some old flames are there, which we'll get to. That's plot number 2. Plot number 3 is David and Donna are in charge of the music.
Mm-hmm.
But Babyface's second keyboardist has not shown up. And it's an emergency. But fortunately, David knows all the songs. We'll get to that. We have John Sears now dating Celeste, who Steve screwed things up with. I just want to go on the record as a full-fledged Celeste head.
We forgot to mention her in the Beautiful Women of the Season. She's so stunning. Diane
Cannon and Cary Grant's daughter.
Oh, wow.
I have no idea why she wasn't a bigger star. Her and Lucinda, I have no idea why Lucinda was at least in Starship Troopers.
Sure.
I don't know what happened with Celeste. I don't know why she didn't stay on the show. I don't know why they picked Claire to move into the beach house over Celeste.
I don't know either. I guess they just liked, they must have really liked Kathleen Robertson. And she did evolve nicely, but Celeste was a no-brainer.
I liked her this season, where it was like she was just this young, precocious, like kind of sexual demon. And then within 2 years, she's just like yelling at Steve. It's like, what happened? You were such a fun character.
Well, Steve, maybe
Steve ruined it. Yeah.
Dragged it down.
She's like, why am I dating a guy who's 35? We have the Dylan scam officially in motion.
The Dylan scam, I felt sad, honestly. I was like, what's wrong with me? I'm like very upset about this. I'm just like, Dylan, no, just like, don't give him your money. It was very upsetting.
Jim Walsh is setting up this whole thing for Dylan, and then Dylan eventually decides, oh, I should just fund this up. One of the crazy things about this show that I've never had a real answer on, at various times, Dylan seems to have like $100 million or $8 million. And they can't seem to decide like how much money he actually has, because the way it's presented when he goes to the greatest single episode of the show, when he goes back to Mexico to get his money back from the estate, which is probably the greatest hour of TV ever. It might be the next Hall of Fame episode.
So good.
He gets his $8 million back, and now he's like rolling in dough again. But meanwhile, he gave Jonesy like a third of it. But how did he not have more than $8 million? His dad stole like billions of dollars from people.
Also, how did he maintain his life? Because he didn't have to move out of his house. He didn't have to sell his car. Like he was able to, and like home ownership is inherently expensive. So if he's not downsizing, there's got to be more money. I guess maybe he has like another kind of trust that gives him like an allowance each month or something. But yes, I feel the same way. Everyone's wealth is sort of like implied, but I would have liked some hard dollars about Dylan's finances, because he never did anything like at all.
Well, and I don't care how dumb or naive Dylan is. Let's say he had $8 million. That's what they stole from him. Who's going to put every single dollar they have into one business and leave themselves no other money to spend, basically? Because by the time we get to season 5, it's like Dylan's broke. He lost all his money. It's like, how did he lose all his money? That doesn't make sense. Why didn't he lose 80% of his money?
Right. Or like a few million. Because even if you're Dylan, let's say you lose $5 million, you're left with $3 million. That's a pretty big hit. $3 million for that guy is not going to get you very far. So I have another question that's related. In this episode, Brandon walks in and he says that Jim's an accountant. And then later, Jim is like putting together this investment group. Yeah. And I'm just like, is this within the bounds of an accountant's role? Or is he like...
He was more than an accountant. I always thought he was like a financial advisor.
Okay. So Brandon was just
accountant.
Trying to like cut him down a little bit by calling him an accountant. Okay.
Because Brandon resented him for whatever reason. So we have that. We have David, I mentioned him playing with Babyface, but also the possibility of him cheating on Donna, which we'll get to. We have John Sears dating Celeste, and then Steve versus John Sears. Dylan's scam in motion. Brenda still loves Dylan. So
still loves Dylan.
We have, unfortunately, Andrea with the premature baby that we have
what
to
part of that's unfortunate? The premature baby?
No, just 6 scenes in the hospital. I definitely in this episode do not want to be in the hospital. And then we have Dylan and Kelly break up, and she goes to DC for Brandon. So there's the big plots.
To say the least.
Ripping through the episode. So Ariel, played by Carrie Wurr, who was on an MTV show before your time called Remote Control.
I remember it.
Where she was one of the hot early 90s babes. So her being on this show is a big deal. And she shows up as like a junior music executive who is working with David. Donna, who won't have sex with her boyfriend and is threatened by all other women because she knows, like, at any time he could just be like, fuck this. Leading to...
Although Kelly and Brenda assured her, you can't keep a man with sex. Look at us.
Right. Yeah, look at it.
That was a great scene.
And that leads to a little bit later, David's eating a hot dog Donna has to run off. And Ariel's like, where'd you get the hot dog? He's like, I'll get you one. And she basically deep throats the hot dog.
100%.
It is one of the craziest scenes of the 90s. She's like, thanks for the hot dog.
It's a huge hot dog with like all the fixings and mustard. And she takes this giant bite of it like it's a porn movie. And then she has like mustard all over her mouth.
And stares at him. She's just maintaining eye contact.
She's trying to seduce him with the hot dog. But I will say, good storytelling. It told me a lot about who she is. And it's a scene we both remarked on. So it worked.
Do you think that was in the script or Carrie was like, I have an idea? What if I deep throat the hot dog?
I think that's on her. Imagine being one of these writers and being like, I'm just going to write into this. Ariel takes a big bite, sort of like she's deep throating it.
While maintaining eye contact with David.
She's giving him a preview of their future with the hot dog.
So we're at the Mardi Gras. We have that plot where Ariel's clearly moving in on David. Donna is clearly sensing it. And then we also have John Sears with Celeste. They find out. Steve gets super jealous. We get some dunk tank scenes, some mud pit, everything with the dunk tank, mud pit. We get Deshaun Hardell in the dunk tank. I know you and I are aligned on this. One of the big TV tragedies of the 90s was that they didn't say fuck it and have Deshaun Hardell date Donna. It was sitting there. I think they thought about it. I think her dad, Aaron Spelling, who ran the show and had a whole production company, I think was just like, no fucking way we're doing that.
It would have been so great. There. I wish that someone would make a show that's like set in the 80s, the late 80s about Deshaun. Just like, why not? Like, why not do like his backstory? Find
like someone... a 90210 prequel, but it's just a whole Deshaun?
Yes, exactly. It's like a Southern California basketball story from the late 80s. Find a really charismatic young black actor, launch someone's career. Like, who says no? This is a great show idea.
Well, great idea, but also the second episode of the 5th season, the show is great at really disgusting casual racism from some of the characters. And the best moment ever for that is they have that like debutante ball thing.
Yeah.
And Donna starts dancing with Deshaun, and Donna's mom is talking to somebody and she just stops. Like there's like
Donna's mom is like disgusting.
Donna's mom stops in complete horror, like a homeless man is taking a dump on one of the tables. And it cuts to Donna dancing with Deshaun. And she's so horrified and upset about it. And it's like, it's an incredible racism moment.
They do have a lot of that in the show, but it also like, I don't think they did this necessarily to like call anyone out, but it's kind of realistic, right? Like Donna's mom probably would have felt that way, much like you're hypothesizing Aaron Spelling may have. It actually
maybe Donna's mom was a proxy for Aaron Spelling.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Bridgerton, honestly, when like the couples like dance in the middle and they're like, oh, I can't believe they would do that. And it's not that different. So
as Mardi Gras is going on, we have Dylan and Jim and Kevin figuring out all the financing. They do a good job in the first hour, setting up. All hell breaks loose in the second hour. We have Roy Randolph trying to get Brenda to go to London and flirting with her one last time. Maybe hoping for a little repeat.
As I get older, I find Roy Randolph more attractive. I'm like, yeah, I see it. He's got some nice eyes.
He looks like a magician.
He does. He looks like some person that like you'd meet once and have like a really fun night with, or at least for me, a really fun one-nighter with that guy.
With Roy Randolph?
Yeah.
Maybe he's available. I hope he's listening.
I think Brenda felt the same way.
There's a lot of Jesse Andrea baby stuff that we're going to skip.
Well, you don't want to talk about him sanding a wooden bassinet that looks like it's for an Amish person or an Amish baby?
I don't. We have Brandon and Brenda's last scene ever together, and I think they know it.
Thank you so much. This is such a weird rewatch because there is like wistful music. Obviously, in post-production, they knew it was going to be Brenda's last scene. They or Brenda and Brandon together. But it's like barely a goodbye. It's just sort of like a good job, sis. Good job, bro. And they deserved more. Like, I don't know. They deserved a real,
I don't know if they knew for a fact she was leaving. I think they
must not have.
I think she was allegedly was causing just a shitload of problems behind the scene.
Because
she's, by the way, would be an amazing documentary because, you know, she was like quickie marriage, like annulled, like dated a bunch of different celebrities, was in that whole like Viper Room type of scene.
Yeah.
So I think they had kind of had it. She kept showing up late to set.
She was fired from Charmed subsequently to Charmed.
Right.
So I think, but I just think like in my dream scenario, you get a goodbye similar to how Valerie was introduced, like in the bathroom with the connecting rooms.
No, totally. What is important about this last scene together is they were able to maintain the creepy sexual tension they had for the last couple of years. No brother and sister have ever interacted like this on TV, where it feels like they might start making out at any time.
It's
Even
very
in this last scene, they're standing like 2 feet away from each other. I promise you, I have a son and a daughter. Like, they do not interact like this. No son and daughter interacts like this.
I have a brother. That would like really grosses me out.
Yeah. Hey, sis. How you feeling? It's like he's going to buy her a drink.
They're trying to make it seem like a sibling rivalry, but it's like sibling sexual tension. It's gross.
Yeah, it's disgusting. So things really take off when Brandon gets to DC. This is one of the best stretches in the history of the show. He runs into Claire because she's with Chancellor Arnold, and she's already made multiple runs at him. But then Lucinda's there. Lucinda was the married professor that he had the affair with. Then she hit on Dylan, which I guess was another interesting Dylan plot. So he cuts things off with her.
Yeah, I mean,
now
it
she's
speaks
back.
to the two triangles, and Dylan's in both. Dylan, Brandon, Kelly, and Dylan, Kelly, Brenda. So he's trapped with the twins. It's kind of funny to think about it that way.
Yeah, when Dylan and Brandon, with the last Dylan, when Dylan gets married and they're like playing poker, and it's like, you're the best friend I ever had, and it's like all you guys did was like fight over women. You guys were terrible friends to each other. But Claire and Lucinda both want a piece of our guy.
Of course. I still do.
Well, it keeps going because Brandon goes back to his hotel room. Claire is taking a shower in his room.
How'd she get in? There's a lot of how did they get into the room?
Who lets somebody just in somebody else's hotel? I know, I'm positive hotels don't work that way.
I know. And then, we'll come back to that later on.
They have a weird kiss. He's like, stay here. Then he runs into Lucinda. She comes back with him on the elevator. Now they're outside. Claire invites Lucinda to dinner. Now we're at a dinner where they're sitting on either side of him, feeling him up. And
it's hard to understand how he continued to function at all. Like,
Right, he's at this huge task force dinner with the chancellor.
And he's like, there's like two women vying to give him a hand job under the table, and yet he's able to like continue conversation. He's able to just keep it.
So here's one of the most unrealistic parts of this episode. And I say that knowing that this is an episode that involves David jumping on stage and playing second keyboard with Babyface.
Just because he knows the song by heart.
I know every song. You literally know every Babyface song? Okay. I just think Brandon at age 19 is saying fuck it and going for the threesome here. The threesome's on the table.
Sure. I agree with that, especially because Chancellor Arnold is aware of how crazy his daughter is. We learned that in this episode. Yeah. And clearly Lucinda and Claire have like some kind of connection there. They both seem like they would be down for it. And yeah, I agree with you. I think he would just go for it.
There's a lot of chemistry between Lucinda and Claire, and it eventually leaves with Brandon switching rooms so that they won't figure out where he is. He decides, I got to get out of this with both of them. And then the two of them run into each other and like, let's have breakfast. And it's like, are you guys first of all, Lucinda's like 27 and Claire's a high school senior, but it's like, wait, are you guys going to hook up? What's happening? And that's the last time we see Lucinda.
Which is tragic. We deserved more. We deserved a Brenda and Brandon goodbye, and we deserved more Lucinda. Like, honestly.
Lucinda was great. I don't know why she'd have a bigger career. Dina Meyer was the actress. I wish she had been brought back multiple times for the show.
What do you think happened to her masks? Like those props? Because I would buy one on eBay if it was available.
What do you think happened to her documentary?
That's a great question. Probably went to the Tribeca Film Festival several years later.
She sold it for $11,000.
Yeah.
So then we get Brenda tells Kelly and Donna she's going to London, and Donna starts complaining about Ariel. This is post hot dog scene. And they're like, don't worry, David loves you. And she goes, it's easy for you guys to say. You guys slept with your boyfriends. Just incredible. The whole scene is just amazing. The three of them. And Kelly's like, yeah, you're right.
Look at us.
Any guy I date keeps coming back. It's like, keep giving it up. For some reason, Kevin and Suzanne have a wedding reception during this episode.
I wonder, were we supposed to think that they had to get married for her to like inherit some of the money? I was trying to think about like, is that part of the scheme, or is that just like to stonewall Jim, or just inexplicable?
I don't really understand it. I don't understand why they didn't do more with the wedding and maybe cut like 2 Andrea Jesse hospital scenes. That would have been my choice. But anyway, Kevin, this is where he's like, we should cut Jim out of this deal. It'd be us. This is hot. And stupid Dylan. Dylan, who I thought was always smarter and savvier than this, but not too savvy in season 4.
Do you think anyone other than Brandon and Andrea are supposed to like really be smart? Does anyone actually show that they're actually smart? Because I can't think of much. I can't point to much for anyone else.
Well, you knew Dylan wasn't smart when he bought half of the Peach Pit. After being there for 4 years, as Nat complained about how bad business was, and Dylan's like, I'm in for half.
Also, like a place, someone who would hire his scammer, fake stepmother. Like,
yeah,
like, okay, sure, I want to be in business with you.
So we have Dylan takes Erica to the Mardi Gras, and then we plan some Dylan, Brandon, Brenda stuff. We have Steve and Jesse have a lunch scene together, which is really Steve's big scene. When Jesse said, "Who does the kid look for?" and Steve goes, "I don't know anyone who looks like me. I'm adopted." They have a moment.
They do have a moment. I thought that was actually kind of sweet. Steve proves himself as a good friend in the back half of the season, and that's like kind of the best version of Steve.
Yeah. They really redeemed him from some of his behavior in the first couple seasons. There's also, as you know, Ian Ziering is one of my favorite unintentional comedy actors ever.
Sure.
And when I wrote this down, when Jesse has to go back to the hospital and he gets up and he's like, okay, yeah, I'll say thanks for coming. And he walks off and they just keep the camera rolling for 3 extra seconds. And Steve does this, I'm going to put my drink down and stare off into the sunset thing, which was an Ian Ziering staple of like, and cut. Great job, Ian. And like, he really like milks the scenery. We have Kelly had told Andrea about Dylan and Brandon. Am I nuts? And Andrea says, to be crazy about Brandon Walsh is not to be nuts. She's off on a plane now. She's going to go find him. And then who shows up in Washington, D.C.?
One thing that always works about 90210
Kelly.
is because everyone's supposed to be rich, and I guess like even the Walshes, who are like the poorest, you can believe they would just get on a plane right away. Be like, yeah, right. Kelly would just buy a flight. Like that checks out for me, even though she's in college.
So he wakes up and Kelly's there and she has breakfast. I like how she thanks the guy, Michael, the room service guy. Thank you, Michael. It's all taken care of. And then, and they're just off. They're going to spend the day together.
Kelly is so beautiful when she arrives in Washington, D.C. And I don't
great.
not
great
just
vibe.
her look. She's sort of like, it's the best version of Kelly Taylor. One who's like in love, one who wants to be supportive, one who wants to like explore. Like she comes with an open mind and an open heart. And it really works. It looks good on her. Great job, Jenny Garth.
It's a reprehensible character for the most part.
Yes, for the most part.
She's a horrible friend. She will do anything for love at the expense of any other person. Right. She's super whiny. I just don't really like her at all.
A pretty unfun drug addict that I don't enjoy.
She joined a cult. Like, just a bunch of shit went on with her. But this was the best version of her. I agree.
Absolutely. This and The Retreat are her 2 best episodes, no doubt.
So then the Mardi Gras, we get Babyface, David having to fake it for sound check. Do you know the rest of my songs? And then he goes and hugs Ariel. and Steve's watching. He's like, who's the babe all over David? And Donna goes, screw you, Steve, or whatever, and storms off. You just know where that one's headed. I really like one of the touches from the early seasons that went away. And I think it was because that guy, Charles Rosen, who ran the show, I think he left after the 5th season, but they have the Frank Capra homage, which is why this is called Mr. Walsh Goes to Washington. Really good scene with Kelly. And then the camera fades back. It's just like some good TV work. We have sad Mrs. Walsh trapped in the worst haircut of all time.
Cindy is she never has a good moment. Like Cindy is never like the star. She's never the fun mom. She never gets a good haircut. She has to move to China eventually. It's just all
She dresses like
Cindy.
An Amish housewife.
Yeah.
Like this
Brenda's
haircut
like
she has here.
her.
What is this haircut she has in this episode? It's
don't
like
know.
high in the top. It's like a Damien Omen type of look. I don't get it.
I think it's supposed to be like modest mom. Like, I think it's supposed to be like, don't look at me. I'm taking care of my household. And like, that's all I do. Like, I think she's supposed to be like very much like not hot. Whereas like some of the other moms, like Jackie Taylor is much more stylish. She also has short hair.
Jackie Taylor is smoking hot mom. Yeah, she was great. I was thinking about it because my kids, Zoe, my daughter, is the exact same age as Brandon and Brenda in this episode, right? She's just finished her freshman year in college. So my wife is technically the Mrs. Walsh of this whole thing. My wife would never hang out with Mrs. Walsh. None of her friends would be like, hey, Cindy Walsh is coming over. They'd be like, oh no, she sucks. But just talks about her kids.
Isn't Cindy Walsh like the archetype mom of like the early 90s where it's just sort of like all you do is you're the mom and wife to this family and that's it.
Yeah. So she's like, she basically tells Brandon, go to London.
And then
do the thing I never had the balls to do myself.
That's true. Good advice. Yeah. But then they watch, sorry if I'm cutting you off, but I get so mad at Brenda because then they're watching Brandon on TV, like literally 5 minutes later.
The task force, the
task force is on TV with Bill Clinton. They actually like seem to have licensed footage from C-SPAN. Love it. And
so it's the real Bill Clinton followed by the fake Bill Clinton shaking hands with everybody, which is another great 90s. The TVs were a lot fuzzier and you couldn't really get, but now the picture's nicer. You could see it.
And Brenda is like so jealous and resentful that her parents are like proud of Brandon. So she's like, fuck it, I got to get out of here. And I shout out to Shannon Doherty. She does a lot with a little of just being like so mad about how they're excited that their son's on TV. But I'm like, Brenda, this is a big deal and doesn't at all take away from you going to London. So like, just be a better sister. It's like the perfect Brenda moment where you're like, oh, this could have been a beautiful goodbye, but nope, you're just like an unhappy person.
Can I push back on that? Can I defend Brenda?
We're here to embrace debate, of course.
We're embrace debate. Coming up next. First of all, I took the scene as she's watching her parents react, realizing that no matter what she does, Brandon's going to be the golden boy.
Well, that's true.
So I don't think she was angry about it. I think it was more like crap. And also she was kind of a mess the whole season. I mean, she got engaged, she got arrested, like a whole bunch of shit happened with her. But I think she realized like, I need my own thing. Because even she says during that scene, she's like, the mom says, I'm so proud. It's the proudest moment. She's like, well, just wait till I win an Oscar. Like, she's just like, can you give me some anything, please? So I feel
she's like,
bad.
Mom, aim higher for me. She's like, don't be proud now, be proud in the future. Okay, that's fair. I just feel like she's overreacting to her parents being excited that their kid's on TV with the president because it is exciting.
It would have been funny if the mom turned around and was like, look, you're getting written off the show. I've got to care more about Brandon. You're not going.
We must send you away to London now. Farewell.
Next year, Tiffany Amber-Thies ends joining the show as Valerie.
And life will never be the same after that.
It goes to a whole other level because we get the task force, which for some reason is being shown on all the TVs in Beverly Hills. It's like, hey, some kids are meeting the president. It's like, put this on every TV.
The task force is also impressive because, correct me if I'm wrong, but the task force is basically a plot device for the entire season. And there aren't a lot of season-long plot devices.
And what's the task? What tasks do they have?
Well, I believe he says the report is about how public education is failing in America or something like that. And so it's about, the public university and making the case for public education, which of course I support. But yeah, like what's Brandon doing to contribute to that? Like from Beverly Hills? Like, I don't understand.
One thing I loved about this season and the next one, and then I think they lost the narrative after that. And the biggest mistake they made was when everybody graduated college and it was like, now it's going to be realistic. These kids are going to have trouble finding jobs. And it was like, that's not the show I signed up for. I signed up for Brandon's the next Bill Clinton. Valerie's going to, at age 19, be able to run a nightclub. David's going to be able to go on stage with Babyface and just play an entire concert with them. That was the whole point of the show. It's like anything was possible. Could Brenda be like the next hot actress in America? Yeah. Because it's 90210. Who cares?
I do think to your point about the after dark, that is to me a real pivot point. Like obviously they get older and stuff, but like when there's a counter programming to the Peach Pit, it does really change. Like when they have graduated
turns
from
into
the
Melrose
diner.
Place. Yeah, they basically wanted it to be an adult drama. So the Gladiator Mud Pit it's for some reason, John Sears and Celeste just every day are going to the Mardi Gras, like no other dates. I'm going to take her to a concert, take her to a restaurant. But Brenda and Donna tell Celeste about John Sears, leading to a scene that I've had some nitpicks with over the years. They all flash John Sears so Steve can knock him off the mud pit and win the bet. And they all rip off their blouses and the buttons fly. But then it's like, so what did they wear the rest of the night?
I think they're wearing a few layers. Great question though. I don't know. And also, because
my wife's big note on the episode was,
it's a great point.
Nobody is ruining their shirt because Celeste wants to help Steve in the mud pit.
I have another note for you, which is I think that the carnival is just one day and we're seeing a really long day. I think this part 1 and part 2.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was like 4 days.
No, I think it's a really long day because...
No, it's at least 2 days.
It's at least 2 days. I think there's like the day 1, which is when Andrea goes into labor and like Kelly tells her she's going to be going to Washington. And then there's day 2, which is like the actual day of the carnival. And like we see it go from day to night and the sun goes down and all that. So I think we're just getting 2 days.
I don't know.
We'll
never know.
We'll watch again.
We'll never know. There will never be an answer. Well, this is when we go to a whole other level because David goes on stage and plays with Babyface.
It's
By the way, I
incredible.
really like that song.
Me too.
You.
I had the Babyface CDs when I was, at this time. I loved Babyface.
Austin Green's up there just fucking killing it. They cut to Carrie Werr, who is just like basically in heat.
She's so proud.
She's like, does anyone have a hot dog? Sir, the hot dog's gone. That part's great. We get Brendan and Kelly in bed.
Especially,
I like being in your world, Brandon, with her little baby voice that she uses.
Also, we have to assume that he's in love because I believe he has the dream about how sex without love is pointless. Yeah. And I'm assuming he and Kelly have sex. So,
and then she's like, I got to bring you tomorrow to the task force. Hold on, let me call the chancellor to get you security clearance. I'm pretty sure that takes like a week.
Yeah, but, I think you have like an FBI interview or something like that.
I'm going to let you take this one. Where do you stand on Kelly breaking up with Dylan and then immediately flying to DC and having sex with his best friend, Brandon, like within 3 days? Aggressive.
It's aggressive. I support it. Like, where do I stand? I support it for a few reasons.
Juliet supports love and sex.
I support love and sex. I pursue women I support women pursuing sex when they want to. I also just more than anything support like the relationships I love on TV. So that includes Brandon and Kelly. And so if this is part of getting them together, I support it. So do you, Kelly, whatever.
Well, we go from the flash of John Sears to David playing with Babyface to Brandon and Kelly in bed to Donna and Brenda now looking for David. And it's like all the limos over here. By the way, why are there so many limos at the fucking California University Mardi Gras? It's like 12
I guess the Babyface
limos.
is a big entourage for a lot of limos. It's like, are they in Babyface's limo, do you think?
Unclear, but one of the guys just is like, hey, have you seen David Silver? Yeah, he's in that limo over there. The fucking limo is probably rocking. And for some reason, they just pretend you're not there in the limo.
Okay, I was going to say the same thing.
Just lock the door. She's
windows,
never going to know you're in there.
Just be silent. Yeah, and be like, he doesn't try hard at all. I think that Ariel screws him over. I think she encourages him to roll down the window and she wants to break them up. She wants Donna to know.
Donna comes in, sits down, sees Ariel, who's just like buttoned back up her blouse.
It's got to be like gross in there.
Limo's got to have like probably a sex smell.
A musk, yeah.
Like a little bit of a sex cologne in there. She starts going, oh my God. And then she sees an XL condom wrapper. Is that like a Magnum?
I guess so. They probably couldn't use any brand, so they made one up.
Was David packing? Like
David's got a hot dog, you know?
Apparently. And the condom wrapper is used when she goes in the limo. David's pants are on. So did they already have sex, but they were still in the limo? I just have a lot of questions.
He buttons them up. Like he's very quickly putting his pants back on when the scene starts. So I think they already had sex.
We were saying my wife was saying how funny it would have been if instead of the wrapper of the condom, it was the actual condom. She's like, oh no. Oh
I did think about that. I was like, where is it? Like, gross.
I think it stayed on David. This is one of the great, and by the way, they've been building to this moment for 3 years of her walking in on him having sex with somebody else. It finally happens. We get Brenda consoling Donna after, I thought he understood. I don't want to be lonely. And then the greatest moment of this episode, Brenda saying to Donna, you're beautiful and you're smart. No, I'm not.
Donna responds, no, I'm not, so quickly.
No, I'm not. Yeah. She's like,
very
no,
funny.
No, we're not saying that. We get
also,
more on.
Then Donna says to Brenda, you're my best friend. And it's like, is she? I thought it was Kelly.
Right. You're my best friend, and I'm never going to see you again in an hour. We mentioned the task force stuff. Dylan signs over his money to Kevin. Just here. Great job, man. Let's leave the bank together. And then the reveal, Suzanne's in the parking lot.
Incredible. And he doesn't get into his car. He goes back over to the other one.
So good. You figure it's coming for 10. I mean, on a Netflix show, this would happen in like one episode. They're setting this up for like half the season of a 32 episode show. It's just, you're never getting anything like this again. We get David trying to apologize to Donna. It was right there. It was right in front of me. I couldn't say no. Like, maybe don't talk, David. And then she's like, was that your first time? Was that your first time? And he's like, no, but only with her. Is that better or worse?
What was the other time with her?
I don't know. I think they just were in the limo for 24 hours. And then the last two things that happened, Erica is now in the airport getting pulled to Brazil with her parents, which she had mentioned she overheard in like a previous episode, and leaves a note with some gum. Please send to Dylan McKay. They're taking me to Brazil. And the note falls on the bathroom floor. Good cinematography.
Good job by her. Yeah.
And then the last one, Brenda. We end with Brenda going to see Dylan. I'm going to London. He says, I'll applaud you from afar. And she goes, I don't want your applause. I want more than your applause. And then they start going at it. So this episode, Juliet, 4 cliffhangers. Dylan gets ripped off, doesn't know it yet. Brenda and Dylan are back together. Brandon and Kelly are together. Nobody knows this either. Donna and David, it's completely broken up. And then semi-fifth cliffhanger nobody really cared about was that Andrea's baby. We'll see what happens.
Andrea's a mom, right? And her baby's premature.
But really, for a 2-parter, really strong to have 5 awesome cliffhangers that you're going into like the summer. You're like, wait, what? What's going to happen?
And also, every character that matters, like except for Steve and I guess Andrea, are involved. It's not even like tertiary stuff. It's also, again, it's all about the rearranging of the pieces. It's like who's going to be with who and like where are they going to be? It's a real they just shake everything up. It's really well done. I also was just thinking like it's so earned because you've asked people to come along for 32 episodes and it really delivers. It's such a great 2-parter.
Like, think about 32 episodes, how long that is. It's 32 weeks, which is basically, I mean, that's like an entire NBA season.
Yeah, I think it's longer than an NBA season. It's crazy. It's 3/4 of the year.
I'm trying to think, like, first of all, this wasn't sustainable because they ran out of ideas with all these characters pretty quickly. They burned out all the actors. Everybody wanted to get off the show unless they were being overpaid. But why can't a show like this happen anymore?
I was just thinking, do you think it would work if they did it 5 nights a week over 6 weeks? And they were just like, this is a huge event and you better tune in. And it was like 1 episode a night, Monday through Friday on Netflix or something. And people just had to come back and you like condense it.
I don't think it would work because there was a water cooler element with the show 30 years ago where everybody was watching it mainly because we had less stuff on. There was less shows like this. And it was like going from week to week where people were like, what's going to happen next? Now it would just be a binge show, right? So if you're doing a binge show, it can't be, you would almost have to do like 3 8-episode binges. Like 24 would be the max for a show like this. Because
with Love Island, which we cover on Bachelor Party, me and Callie, that is like 40 to 50 episodes a season. And it's on 6 nights a week. and like people get really sucked in and you have to kind of keep up. But if you don't keep up, you're kind of screwed. So it's a high barrier to entry, but it's like, it is very fun. I think the problem with teen shows now is that they're just not willing to be as flagrant with like what is and isn't acceptable. Like Steve was involved in, as we said, like 2 mental health crises with a woman this season. Like that would never happen now.
Right.
And this, it's just like, it's just a different culture. I don't know. And I also think it's harder to get adults to play teens in a way that people are willing to go along with. Because like believing that Brandon would be in college or like any of these people, like is just no way. It's too realistic now is kind of the problem.
Well, we talked about the OC with the 20th anniversary. And we were talking about how that was like the son or daughter of this show. And it came out 10 years later. It learned a lot from it. It did a lot of the same beats and ironically had a lot of the same problem where the first season they just did too many episodes and they ripped through a shitload of plots.
Right.
And then there's been other ones since, all of which you have loved.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Gossip Girl.
Yeah, all of them. Well,
really none in the last like 8 to 10 years though.
I think that's like The Summer I Turned Pretty is like now the equivalent of 90210, but it's not nearly as like aggressive. And then I've been told Euphoria is mostly watched by adults, like not by teens, even though Zendaya is really popular with young people. So like, I think part of it also is like teenagers and 20-year-olds aren't watching as much TV, which I know I'm not the first person to say, but that's part of the problem, right? That's why I do wonder if it's higher frequency and like you can watch it on your phone more quickly, like does that work? Because what if like each day of the week, what if it was like higher concept and it's like on Mondays it's a Steve story, on Tuesdays it's Brenda, on Wednesdays it's Kelly or whatever, and they're like intertwined and stuff, but you're getting like different points of view or something like that. Like I think there's something about the format that needs to be evolved, and also a fuck itness, or people are just like, this is a storyline we're doing, fuck it, and like we're going for it because this is like a ridiculous show, but it's really fun. And I'm not advocating for all of like the offensive stuff to be brought back, but the melodrama of it, and like the OC did melodrama so well, like that needs to be amped up. Ginny and Georgia kind of does it. I think that if that was not a binge, I wonder if that would have a little bit more of the staying power, because that also has like sex and people getting mad at each other. But I don't know. It's just a different time.
I talked to my daughter about it because she watched every episode of Summer I Turned Pretty, devoured it, but was also like dissatisfied with it for a lot of different reasons. I'm not going to speak for her, but I think the reason she said why they don't have shows like this is she says the shows now are too self-conscious.
Yeah.
And they're always trying to check every box and make sure they're not going to be judged in certain ways. And because she's watched some 90210 with us, and she was like, the fun thing about shows like this is it's just completely unself-conscious and not self-aware at all. And there's so much unintentional comment in it. And now just everything is so self-aware. You almost couldn't have a show like this. Even the OC, which had some unintentionally funny stuff in it, right? Like the fact that Ben McKenzie was 28 years old and 5'7", getting in fights every week. But for the most part, it was a pretty meta show.
Yeah. Yeah.
This 90210 is not a meta show in any way. Like Steve, Ian Ziering really felt like he was one of the best actors on TV.
Definitely. And they became huge stars in like the beginning of a different tabloid era. I think you kind of need a period piece to do some of this stuff. Like it's top of mind because it's on right now, but Bridgerton is ridiculous. And part of the fun is how completely unrealistic it is, but they can hide behind it being in like Regency era England or whatever. And so like the sex on Bridgerton is like fairly explicit, like more and more each season, and so silly and like not believable at all. But I don't think you could do that with like current London society. You kind of have to set it in the 18 whatevers.
Well, so maybe the answer is to do another 90210 show like this and set
like
it
a 90s
backwards.
Show.
Yeah.
Well, that's another reason to do my Deshaun Hardell prequel. Let's set it in the late 80s in LA.
Oh my God.
Well, early 90s.
90210 only got crazier because after this, one of the great things about this season finale, especially if it's on like Pluto, we go into season 5, Valerie shows up and just supercharges the show. Dylan falls off the wagon, starts drinking again. And the 9 episodes when he's basically drunk the whole time is probably the highlight of the show, at least for me.
It's so good. I mean, so many crazy things still happen on this show afterwards, but it's interesting when you lose the nuclear family, like the foursome, it does like really radically alter how the show thinks about itself.
Yeah.
It's no longer set around like this, this Midwestern family finding themselves in LA. And it's kind of interesting. It does change a lot.
It becomes such a money grab by the end. You have Brandon leaves the show. You have everybody living in the Walsh house, but nobody's related to the Walshes, including
ridiculous.
People that they've never met, like the Brandon replacement lawyer guy. It's so bad. So this is the highlight. Season 4. Some people feel like there's this Luke Perry Entertainment Weekly cover story that where he basically shits on 90210 in it. And it was a pretty famous 90210 thing where he's like, I don't know, he was really unhappy with season 4 and was just saying like, I don't know what we're doing with these storylines anymore and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're just, all due respect, Luke, but you're completely wrong. Season 4 is amazing.
So wrong. Can we just honor Luke Perry for a second? He came to Grantland to do your podcast and he came with his dog. He was so nice. He was so chill. And it was a life highlight for me. Thanks for letting me come along that day. We had 2 great experiences, or I did, because met him at Jimmy Kimmel Live when he came on. And me and Tony Barbieri, another writer, a friend of mine, we got him to reenact the Jack McKay death scene and sink to his knees and scream no in a crowded green room of people wondering what the fuck was going on. He also, that night, it was Monica Lewinsky was the guest host. Wow.
And we were under orders never to talk about Clinton in any way.
That's crazy.
And poor Jimmy was so desperate for a ratings bump that we had to have her on, but we weren't allowed to talk about Clinton. And then near the end, Luke Perry was on the couch with her. And at some point he turned to her and he said something like, man, I've always kind of dug you since that Bill Clinton thing. Like he kind of like started hitting on her. It was like amazing. And so he like broke the seal of it.
That's amazing.
But anyway, so we had that. And then the second time was when he came to Grantland with his dog and we did the pod, which he was such a great guy. Everybody loved him.
He really was. It's so tragic. By all accounts, people really liked him too. So I just feel lucky I got to meet him. Yeah.
All right. That's it. That's our Hall of Fame episode. You can find it. It's on, these episodes, they're on Pluto constantly. There's a 90210 channel and
Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus has all the episodes. And then there's an Instagram account if you want to find any of the music scenes that got cut out. It's a whole universe. 90210. Juliet, this was a true delight.
Thank you so much for having me,
I feel like we would have
Bill.
done this anyway, even without microphones.
It was great just to chat with you. Thanks for doing it in front of a microphone with me.
And thanks to Chris Sutton for producing as well. We will see you next time, hopefully with more prestigious shows than this on the Prestige TV podcast.